So my technological skills are limited, but I just wanted to say, again, thanks so much. It is amazing to be here. This is my wife and me and our three kiddos. That is Amanda's my wife. And our three kids, Millicent is the tallest there in the back. She's 6. Juniper is our middle. She is 5. And then that is Trey. He'll be 4 in March. And if you're like, they look cute. They look approachable, easy to manage. You can come on over anytime you want, and we'll help you to take a great nap afterwards, because that's how we roll. But we arrived in São Paulo. It'll be 2 years next month, which is awesome. And as I think one of the other brothers shared, obviously, we're kind of just coming out of pandemic. So our first year was right in the middle of COVID, which makes for a really interesting transition. So really, it feels like in many ways relationally that we've only been there, 9 months really. We didn't do the opening closing kind of thing that the US did. We didn't really properly open up until, I guess we started maybe 10 months ago. So it feels like it's been, this last semester was really our first real proper semester that people were seeing each other, certainly on campus. So I couldn't even drive through campus, physically drive through it. The entrances weren't even open the first year we lived there. So that was interesting. So it's amazing and incredible. That is the skyline of São Paulo. There is 23 million people in the metro area. It's the 5th largest city in the world. It is 20 to 25, 30-story buildings for as far as the eye can see. This is on top of what I think is the 3rd or 4th largest building in downtown. This is, I guess, downtown São Paulo. And you can look in every single direction and it looks, in fact, this is the light area. If you look on the other way, it goes farther and it's more dense. It's incredible. It's almost double the size of New York. So it's nutso. It's crazy. There's nothing quite like it, but it's definitely, it's amazing. This is our senior staff group when the Tollivers visited. So the only couple that's not in here is one of our elders and his wife, but we have an incredible crew. This is a church though. Right now we're at about 970 members and it's spread out over 5 regions, but this is a senior staff and only 4 of the 5 regions even have leaders and half of them are paid. And so I'm going to talk a little bit. So I hope as many of us, you've got more full-time staff in your church than we have in the country. So when we talk about resources and we talk about gratitude and perspective, it really does help sometimes for us to connect. That's one of the beautiful things about this, is because when you're in your own snow globe, sometimes it's really hard to see outside of it. But this is the team that's been serving in many of them since really the letter or before. So São Paulo is a church that grew up to about 4,000 members. And after the letter went to 900 members in 90 days. I'll repeat that just in case that math, that sounds wild. 4,000 members to 900 members in 90 days. It is the largest numerically hit church in the movement that I know of. And in some ways, time doesn't heal, healing heals. And if you don't work that process and you get there, there's still pockets and challenges and doubts. And we're facing some of those. I'll share a little bit about that. But this is the senior staff group, and I love them. They become some of our best friends. They are incredible. And despite facing some of the biggest things that so many people would have quit, not only have they not quit, they've got this humility and tenacity, and it's warm. It's not callous and cold. It's brilliant. It's amazing. This, though, is kind of our younger staff crew. This is a school of missions that started last February, so we've been around 11 months, outside of our city of São Paulo. So Brazil, quick geography lesson, is about the size of the continental US. So I was in Texas and thought, oh, Brazil's about the size of Texas, right? No. It is the size of the entire country, like this continental US, excluding Hawaii and Alaska. That's about the size of Brazil. We have about 2/3 the people, about 240 million, but we only have 1/3 of the land to live on because the Amazon is huge. So outside of São Paulo, we have 7 other churches, but I'm trying to explain this in a way that makes sense. So outside of São Paulo, in all of the full-time ministry teams, we have 4 people under the age of 50 serving in the full-time ministry. In the rest of the country, 4 people under the age of 50 in the rest of the country. We only, when we got here almost 2 years ago, we only had, I think, 4 serving, 4 others that were serving under there. So 8 in the entire country under the age of 50. I bet most of us, you're like, I have more interns than that. Yeah, this is so that you can imagine the sense of hope that was missing. Now, because of the teamwork with the South American Mission Society and Beam, we have 17 people in São Paulo alone. Most of them in their 20s. We have one gal that's 19, a couple that are early 40s. In fact, the tallest guy there on the left is our teacher in training. He's my academic director. He and his wife are the oldest. She's our admin, and he's a future teacher. It's unbelievable what God is doing. 17 people that are training, and we don't have enough money to hire everyone who wants to. And a lot of these are kingdom kids with a dream. They're not bitter. They're not wrestling. They're not grumpy. They're not griping. They're choosing cities that they want to plant in the coming years as they're training. It's just this beautiful picture. This right here is the São Paulo church planting in 1987. There was like 18 people, I think, that went. They had 100 baptisms in the first year, 200 baptisms in the second year. But this was us in October for our 35th anniversary, and our 970 members had 1,150 people at church. And that's actually when we were formally kind of appointed and transitioned into the lead role. And so we love this group. This church is amazing. It is warm. Man, there's so many stories. I can't get into it. They hadn't had a campus ministry retreat ever until about a year and a half ago. And then this was the one we just had a couple of months ago, and we had 100 people there. I think there were 15 or 17 friends. The first guy that got baptized out of there that's been studying the Bible, he got baptized in the North region. He was a professional soccer player, not in Brazil, because you can be like a mildly decent soccer player in Brazil, and you go somewhere else and they hire you professionally. It's nuts. We had a family that brought their 12-year-old down, and he was a stud soccer player in the U.S., and he was pretty humiliated because in order to play, he had to play with the 9-year-olds. So that's kind of how the soccer game is strong in Brazil. That's when he visited in October. That's our school missions crew is with Doug. Doug Arthur came and visited as well. And we started this academic program on the side of our School of Missions, which is kind of a ministry training academy, or AIM, I think is what they call it in Atlanta. This was the first one we did. Mike got a chance to come and teach on church leadership and biblical leadership. And we had almost 200 people from our church come out and to be a part of that. It was beautiful. So it's not just the youth, and it's not just one side of it. It's not just university students. It's the whole church. We're feeling revival. I'm going to come back to these pictures in a moment and share some good news. So I just wanted to start there. Is everyone able to see me? Hopefully that was a relatively decent introduction, hug, and from São Paulo. So that's great. If you got a Bible, turn over to Mark chapter 9. So we're talking about being a missionary on campus, and I can't think of a better missionary ever that has ever existed than Jesus. I don't know about you. I don't think I would have left heaven to come reach out to me. I don't think I would have done that. Mostly because I'm a headache, but 2, because heaven, I hear, is amazing. But he did. And not only did he do it, he didn't do it begrudgingly. He wrestled with his own stuff. He faced an enormous amount of challenges. The list is long. I mean, and I just feel like I just turned 20 years old as a Christian. Was baptized June 2nd of 2002 in Seattle. Go, University of Washington, go Dogs. And I think over the years and the decades, the more I study Jesus and the more I face in my own life as a missionary wherever God puts me, the more I fall in love and the more I'm impressed with Jesus. And if you're not, it's because you're not studying your Bible that much. Because you see the nuances in these days and the grief and the families and the hopelessness and the challenges and the hunger and the exhaustion. And when you're doing ministry with 1 or 2 or 3 kids, and it's big city or small town, and it's church with hurts, and it's people that are grumpy, and you didn't say that sermon right, and oh, Jacob, you went 3 minutes too long on that thing, and everyone's got feedback, right? Everyone's got it. We didn't say that well enough, bro. I could have used a little bit more humor when you were talking about inspiration. You're like, goodness sakes, we're in the service industry, but this isn't McDonald's. If you want to make an order, go to McDonald's. They'll take your order. But what's amazing is that in the ministry, and I bet you can say this too, how many of us haven't even started our semester and we're like, I'm already tired? Anybody honestly feel that way? I do. Now, I don't see any hands. I see smirks. I see people trying to avoid their camera. That's how I feel. So maybe this sermon, some people just turned off their mic, amen, or turned off their camera. They're like, I'm done. And you know what's amazing about this is that Jesus gets all of that. And this is probably not maybe exactly the lesson you're expecting this morning. But oftentimes people go, Jeff, maybe you guys have heard something like this. Oh, what you're doing is so inspiring. Maybe some teen, maybe parents say that. Maybe some other guy from another city. Oh man, you went to Flagstaff, Amanda, you're so amazing. And you're like, I don't feel amazing. It feels hard. That's what inspiring feels like when you're in the driver's seat. You're like, this is just hard. Or it's just tiring. It's just challenging. It's just life. Oh man, doing it with 3 kids. How do you do it? What, am I going to leave them in San Antonio? Of course, this is how you do. This is just life. This is our life. But I love the way Jesus shows us how. And what I want to do is look at this situation. And the truth of it is if you're going to be a missionary and you're going to follow God's call, you're going to get stuck and you're going to face hard times. And if you won't face those hard times like Jesus, you won't make it. And that's the difference between people who are here for an awesome season and people who are here for 20, 30, 40 years. And we all know the stories of people who started strong and are no longer here, not because they got a different passion or God called them in a different direction, but because they quit because their fear got the best of them, or their anxiety got the best of them, or their doubts got the best of them, or their insecurities got the best of them, or the criticism from people got the best of them. Or sometimes we feel like Moses and like, Lord, have mercy, there's 1 million people. We just gave you miraculous food and you still won't stop complaining. Right? Yeah, I don't know if you've ever felt like, I don't have 1 million people, but sometimes it feels like that. And I'll tell you what, no matter what you're going to face, the way you face these moments are going to determine whether God can move in you and through you or not. And we're going to check out this really cool situation. Does all that make sense? You guys can nod. I see like 6 of you. Like some reason I got Jacob, Leke, Brendan, Amanda, Robin, Chelsea, and Schnell. So at least you guys are the ones I'm looking at, right? When you preach a sermon, you always have a few people you look at in the crowd. And some people have this face, they're like, no, I don't like that. Well, amen. If you're, lactose intolerant or whatever, and I didn't make the right food for you, sorry about that. But we're going to look at Mark chapter 9. Let's go there together. We're going to read in Mark 9:14. Let's read together. I'm reading in the NIV, so if you're reading in something else, well, go, Lord be with you. Pick it up verse Mark 9:14. It says, when they came, so just give us a little bit of framework here. So Jesus is an awesome leader. He's going on an awesome adventure. He's just coming down the mountain with his best friends. The guys built memories. They went out on the mountain to have some fun together and building memories, and they saw him transfigured. That's not a bad way to have a men's retreat. You know what I mean? That's pretty good. They're remembering that. That's not just a broken down bus. They're talking about that for a long time. That's amazing. They're coming down off this incredible time, building memories, best friendships, deepening, deep conversations, challenged, and they come down, and this is what they find themselves into immediately. I want to talk about a situation that's stuck. Check this out. Verse 14, when they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. I'm not sure wonder was what they were all overwhelmed with, but they ran to greet him. Verse 16. What are you arguing? What are you arguing with them about? Have you ever asked that question? Like you walk into your Devo, like, what are you guys arguing about? Sometimes I don't want to ask that question. I appreciate Jesus asking it. And in verse 17, a man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth and gnashes his teeth and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. O unbelieving generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. When people say that like Jesus never wrestled with frustration or disappointment, he was always positive. I'm like, I don't think disappointment is entirely unbiblical, evil, or sinful. How you respond to it can be. Or even like, goodness sakes, guys, like, what are we doing here? Like, there's as a parent with toddlers, I go, yeah, I can feel that sentiment. I get that. I don't think that's sinful. I think it's pretty human. It's pretty reasonable to me. But I love this. It says, how long shall I put up with you? And watch Jesus now. Watch everything begin to change. Bring the boy to me. So they brought him. And when the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Imagine being the father. And sometimes in our Bible study, we read these words, but we don't get in the story. We are not reading Harry Potter. This is not fiction. This is real. Imagine being the dad. I came to you. I was looking for you. I didn't get you. I got like diet disciple that can do nothing. We've been wrestling around now to the fact that we're arguing. There's a crowd building. The pressure's on. He brings him to the boy. Finally, Jesus, man, we've got him. He brings the boy to him, and things go from bad to worse immediately. Could you imagine the overwhelming hopelessness of this dad right now, this very moment? Could you imagine? And you're like, oh my goodness, did I just make the biggest mistake? There's nobody else. Can you imagine? Does that make sense? And this moment by moment, this verse by verse, these are people. And so we see this and we keep going. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Verse 21, Jesus asked the boy's father. You could imagine watching this. Imagine being like one of the guys in the crowd. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? That is not the response I want as a dad. Can we fix the situation then debrief? Can we do that? That would be better. From childhood, he answered. It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. If you can, said Jesus. Everything is possible for him who believes. Immediately, the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. It's amazing how fast we repent when real stuff that we love is on the line. When we really get it, it's amazing how fast things change. It's amazing how fast humility comes. But it says in verse 25, when Jesus saw that a crowd was running to the scene, he rebuked the evil spirit. You deaf and mute spirit, he said, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again. And the spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him up to his feet, and he stood up. After Jesus had gone indoors, his disciples asked him privately, why couldn't we drive it out? He replied, this kind come out only by prayer. Man, have you ever felt stuck? In the ministry, facing situations, you're studying the Bible with a friend. Have you ever felt that moment of like, if it's not God, it's nothing? And sometimes actually that's honestly some of the most honest moments, because with the more experience we have and the more training we have, we can begin to believe that it's all about our wisdom and our experience and our training and our talent. And I got the 5 o'clock shadow beard. I got the hair. I got the tall, dark, and handsome. I've got whatever enough to get you to come to Jesus. And you miss it. No, it's never been about that. Never. And it never will be. And if you're what attracts people to Jesus and not Jesus, they'll leave because you're never going to be enough. And what we see is this wrestling match, and Jesus is facing this stuff head on. There are 100 lessons we could probably learn out of this. And if you want to be a missionary, no matter if it's on campus or wherever God calls you to be, because right now campus is just your training ground. You're going to go somewhere else. God's going to use you. And wherever you are, look, there you are. Who you are is where you lead from. So this is an inside out thing. And when we look at Jesus, I think we're going to find a couple of lessons. I want to fire through them. Hopefully they help you. One, we're going to look at kind of what Jesus says and does, and I think it's pretty amazing. One, Jesus says, bring the boy to me. There's the points. I'm going to kind of go through things that Jesus says. One, he says, bring the boy to me. You want your group to get unstuck? You want your group to grow? You want to see some great things happen? You do it. You take the ball. You face Goliath. You go. And I'll tell you what, sometimes as we talk, guys, we start, hey, how's your group going? Man, I got this Bible talk, man. No one shares their faith. You ever responded that way? I know I have. Oh man, let me tell you about my group. Man, I can't get anybody to do anything. I'm like, maybe they're doing exactly what their leader's doing. But the truth of it is that, man, that's the job of a leader, baby. We got to be out front. You can't lead from the back. You can manage from the back. Stop trying to stop trying to push your people and pull them. We got to get out front, show them that it's possible. And some of these things we're preaching and telling them that you've seen it happen, and you're trying to give them the vision of what's possible. You show them. And what begins to happen is when you get out front and you do it, like Jesus goes, bring the boy to me. Wow. And we're 9 chapters deep. We're over halfway through Mark. And he's not going, doggone it, how many miracles do you need to see? What's your problem? No. He goes, bring the boy to me. Game time. And this is the fastest way to change all the complaints and all the criticism into a powerful example. No one can argue with a transformed life. No one can argue with a phenomenal example. Nobody. And there is a cautionary tale here to not feel like Atlas, like everything is on your shoulders. That's another side of that. We'll get to that in a moment. But I think you do it. You're there for a reason. You're the leader for a reason. You're there. You're what your group needs. You're it. You're the answered prayer. And they don't need your perfection. They don't need you to be Jesus. They don't need you to die on a cross. They need you to be you and to be faithful and to be courageous. That's what they need. They need to see it's possible. You go slay Goliath. You do it. Take your men, take your women with you. Let them watch you do it. Saul got the entire Israelite army on for like a month and a half almost. You want to talk about an inspiring preacher, but he could never get the job done. No speeches, no sermons, armor that didn't even fit. He's like, we're done. David walks up, boom, and with conviction and with a stone slays Goliath. And everything changes. Go slay Goliath. Watch them. Let them watch you do it. Put the hope and the vision in their hearts. Put the training in their heads and then the stones in their hand. But you show them. You're what your group needs. Guys, inspiration and fire cannot be taught. It can only be caught. It's how does a group transform? How does your ministry explode? It's you and a few. Not everyone will go with you. Take the ones who will. Stop trying to move your whole group an inch. Move the few that want to go, move them miles. You guys go. And what you'll find is that fire does spread, and it's amazing. And I love the way that Jesus starts it. He's like, let's go, bring the boy to me. That's how things begin. The second thing, how long has he been like this? I love this is another thing that Jesus says. This is point 2. Jesus goes, how long has he been like this? Like can you picture this? Like Jesus and the dad are like chatting. The demon is like just thrashing on this kid. Like, have you ever tried to have like a deep conversation and you got like your kids are playing, like my kids will like get into a fight. They're like, Millie's got he hit me. Like that's a lot like a campus devotional or like at least the campus men's households that I've lived in. And I'm like, man, and it's like, you're like chatting, but there's like this kid, your kid is like thrashing around and Jesus is just chatting it seemingly nonchalantly. Okay, well, he's got how long has it been like this? What's going on? This is wild scene to me. But I think it's amazing to me that Jesus stops and he asks questions and he gets the facts about what's happening. It's not faith to be naive, uninformed, or aloof about what's going on in your ministry. That's ignorance, and it's not bliss. You have to face the hard truth. Like we have to be able to face the facts with faith. Like how are we doing? How are our people doing? And not make that all about us and get crushed under, there's this avalanche of insecurity and my peer failures. That's not it. It's good job security in the ministry. There are always going to be things to do. But you got to face the hard truth. You got to ask the hard questions. You got to just get down to it. And isn't this amazing though? Like Jesus's humility here is amazing. Do we think like Jesus didn't know the answer or the details of this kid's life? Like, are we thinking he's uninformed? Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I didn't know about Jimmy. How long's this been happening? I forgot about it. Like that. Jesus knows exactly what's going on. He's God in the flesh. And not to mention, he doesn't need to know in order to fix the situation. You want to talk about some solution-focused therapy there. He doesn't need to know. Oh, it's been 9 years. I don't care. Boom, it's done. It's not happening ever again. But he asks the questions. He figures out what's going on. Jesus, the Son of God, all-knowing, all-powerful, asks a question. Do you ask questions? Will you deal with the truth of you? Will you ask? Will you seek to learn? Like Jesus doesn't need to learn anything, and he's still asking questions. His humility is amazing. At minimum, it seems to connect and draw out dad and to deal with what's going on and to get the heart out. Like there is no such thing as leadership and connection without our humility. One, because you won't grow. And two, you can't connect and inspire people. If you appear perfect and that you never need to, you've got it all together, eventually people will stop following you. Not because they don't believe it, but because they will believe it. And they can't relate and they can't be inspired and they can't follow an example. It's too good. Don't get into that lie. Don't do it. Your vulnerability, your humility, that's the key to serving for a lifetime. That's the key. That's it. Some people go, oh, it's love. I go, I don't know. Because in the moments that I've lacked love, my humility at least allows people to get in there and help me grow in that area. So it's one of those chicken and the egg things. You're like, but if you were loving, you'd be humble. Love's not proud. You're like, okay, fair point. Point to you. Great. Good point. But for me, practically, where do I start? Ask some questions. Get honest. Be real. What's up? We have good news sharing. Are you like hearing Kyle, and you're going, oh, San Diego's doing great. Again, fantastic. Great job, bro. Sometimes we read that scripture in Romans, we rejoice with those who rejoice, grieve with those who grieve. And we're grieving while others are rejoicing. The sense of competition for us is just too high. And we forget that we're not competing with one another. We're competing on the same team and beating Satan. That's the only enemy. It's not Kip's group. I'm not competing with Kip. Are you kidding me? Not competing with any other group or any other denomination. No, we are servants of God. That's it. He will sort it all out. But we got to get the competition right in our own head. And they go, oh, that's just a guy thing. Ladies, let us be honest. We all wrestle with this in our various ways. I'll let my wife preach that at some future women's devotional so I don't get myself in too much trouble. But this is a human thing. This just isn't a man thing. Or I was an athlete. I get really competitive. We all have our stuff. Humility is the key. Jesus is brilliant at this. Isn't that amazing? It's incredible to me. Third thing. Is all this making sense? I don't know. The six of you that I see, okay, I get a couple of thumbs. Chanel's like, Chanel seems unimpressed. So that's what he's kind of like, okay, reasonable point. Yeah, the whole fires, caught and not taught, fair point. But, the rest of it, I don't know. All right, third point. If I can. I love this. I love how Jesus, he kind of stops. They're in the middle of the conversation. Kids still thrashing. And we're not talking about, if it's me and I'm in the crowd, I'm like, can we just talk about the veil that has just cracked between our world and the demons and the angels and this spiritual battle I don't get? This kid is getting crushed by a demon for real. Not like I had a bad dream or, a Pentecostal that's freaking out about watching Harry Potter and feeling whatever. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about this kid is getting crushed live on TV right in front of us. And it's not like, oh, let's clean this up and then let's you and me have coffee, Dad, in private. I don't want you to feel humiliated. No, he's like, if you can help us, help us. And he's like, if you can, what are you talking about? This is amazing to me, how Jesus what Jesus seems to prioritize and what I wouldn't and what I do. I want the results. Jesus is working on faith. That's what makes him pull over. Lack of love, lack of faith every time. It's the only time we see Jesus rebuke anybody. Woman is naked in the middle of the village about to be stoned to death. There's no talk about like immorality. Hey, let's look over to Galatians 5. Like, no one's having that talk. He's dealing with the lack of love of all of these religious leaders. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. And in this moment, he pulls the car over to talk about the obvious elephant in the room, which is this dad's lack of faith, his doubt. And a big part of godly leadership is having hard talks. And it's dealing with doubt and a lack of faithfulness. Stop saying that no one gets baptized in the summertime. Stop saying that community colleges don't do anything. Stop saying commuter schools can't grow and produce anything. Stop saying athletes can't become Christians. Stop saying this. Stop saying that our generation isn't as open as previous ones, because then your people will start to believe you. It's not true. People are killing themselves more than ever before. Our world is screaming for purpose. They're screaming for it. They're researching it on Google more than ever before. I think it's possible that we may have the most fertile field if we can figure out how to plant and grow in it. But stop it. Because honestly, sometimes that big part of confronting the if I can kind of wrestling match is with the person in the mirror. It starts with us. And we've got to wrestle with that. God can work anywhere. I love that Jonathan and armor bearer moment. I love the training situation, but it's the spirit of Jonathan that his dad doesn't have. Because both Saul and his son Jonathan, they're the only two swords in the entire Israelite army. What started, and revival and revolution starts with very small things, this one moment. As Jonathan takes his armor bearer, the difference is nothing will stop the Lord by few or by many. That's what we need in you. That's what your group needs. That's why God's got you there. And you got to have them. You got to have these hard talks. You got to have these moments with ourselves, with one another. Many times it starts with us, and it starts with the few that are with us. That transforms us. Guys, sometimes we think university ministry is about baptizing 1,000 people. That's an amazing opportunity. I think that universities are a gift, and I don't have time to explain the difference in Brazil and the beauty of this situation we have in the United States. It's fantastic. But the biggest deal is about putting the character and the faith of Jesus into the heart of another man or woman. That's what we're doing, and that's what transforms the world, not just putting 1,000 people into water. It's putting the heart, that faith and that love in someone else's heart. That's the real discipleship. That's the work. That is how our world transforms. It's how it's always transformed. And you do not get the ministry you want. You do not get the life you want. You don't get the marriage you want. You don't get the group and the ministry, and the university campus ministry you want. You get the life and the ministry and the marriage that you tolerate. That's what you get. And I'm not talking about anger and pressure and manipulation tactics. No. I'm talking about confronting the lack of love and the lack of faith in our own hearts and with one another, and go, guys, we refuse to be a hard-hearted group. We refuse to make this about competition with someone else. We refuse to make this about us and our ego and our numbers. We refuse to get discouraged. No, we are about serving and loving, and we share our faith because God has called us, and we are looking for seekers without doubt, and we rejoice when we find them. But if I'm Jeremiah and everyone says no, I will still keep sharing my faith because it's about Jesus and I love him, and I refuse to get hard-hearted. I refuse to get cold, and I refuse to stop believing. That right there. You bring that, you will be a missionary in any place you go ever, whether it's in the marrieds ministry, it's in Brazil, New York, San Diego, wherever God calls you. That's it. And I think for many of us, we know it, and we've seen what that heart does. And we've seen just a little bit of faith and a little bit of perseverance, the way that it transforms our groups. And we've got to be able to talk to each other and hear it and say it. And some of us, honestly, we got to read Hebrews 12 again and not get so crushed and discouraged by the discipline, or to disregard it and be flippant about it. That's the two extremes that Hebrews 12 says, okay, when God disciplines because he loves you and believes in you, and oftentimes God has more faith in you than you do, so don't trip out about that. God believes in us. He's handed us so much. I wouldn't believe in me. I would not have sent me to Brazil. Hello, come on. But he hands us this amazing thing, and he goes, you can do it. And in fact, not only can you do it, you've got so much more in you, and I'm going to help you get there. I'm not quitting on you. And in the gym, when you go lift, you want more weight on the bar. Why is it that in the ministry or in life or in parenting or emotionally, we want less weight on the bar? The goal is to get stronger so the weight feels lighter, and that's actually growth. That's what we're looking for. And it starts with, hey, Lekka, can we talk, man? Can I tell you about what you don't know? Let me tell you what we have in our discipline. Let me tell you what you don't know about what's going on in my heart. Let me tell you about how I've been tempted. Let me tell you what I need to get honest about. Let me tell you what, or hey, bro, what do you think of me? Hey, how do you feel? What did you think about my sermon? What do you think about our ministry? What do you think about me? Hey, you came and visited. How do you feel about me? How do you feel about the way I treat my wife? Hey, what do you think about, like, is there any area of my life you are worried about because we haven't talked about it in a while? That it's just the honesty and the ongoing. I just want to confront the stuff in my heart, and I don't want Satan to get a foothold. That's how we transform. Does that make sense, gang? That's discipling. It's not lording anything over one another. And it's certainly not twisting each other's arm. Last thing as we end is only by prayer. In some translations, says prayer and fasting. Your walk with God that nobody else sees is the most important part of your leadership. People will they will respect and sometimes fear or laud and be encouraged, be inspired by what they see. Satan and his demons, they're actually fearful about the things that no other people see. It's the time you spend on your knees. It's the way you beg God. It's your time with him, how deeply rooted in the Bible you are, and how deep your prayer life goes. When the 7 sons of Sceva, I love the story in the book of Acts, try to drive out demons, in the name of Jesus, whom Paul preaches. I love it because the demons, they respond. They're like, this is a moment. I wish I could. This is one of those, I want the ultra high def, DVD, screening room in heaven. I'm like, I want to see this scene. I want to see how this went down. There's so many movies. I wish that HBO or Netflix or something would do a series on the book of Acts and then King. There's so many of these moments. But the demons respond and they're like, Jesus, hello. Yeah, we know him. Paul, we've heard of. I'm sorry, who are you? And people for the last 2,000 years talk about Paul. And very few people knew about Paul at this moment in the book of Acts when the sons of Sceva happens. Acts has not been written yet. No one knows about the stuff that Paul is doing. But the demons know. Do the demons know you? Do they know the time you spend in your word? Do they know the time you spend on your knees begging God? That's the power, gang. Everything else is done. We don't, point 1, 2, and 3 doesn't matter if point number 4 doesn't happen. It's our time with God. This is the focus of this year for me, period. And to confess, I feel like in the last year, I've been arrogant enough to think that I can do this without it. How do you have, and honestly, when I don't pray, if I won't live. It's uninspiring when you don't live a life that requires prayer. You know what I'm saying? And I think our vision is we got 19 cities above 1 million people that don't have a church in Brazil. We're aiming to get them there. Every city among over 2 million people throughout Brazil. We want to see a training center. We want a Bible talk within walking distance of every Brazilian. And Brazilians can walk a long ways. We've got 23.5 million people in the metro area of São Paulo. We have 1 million campus students. We probably have quadruple that in young professionals. We have cities that don't have any church from us. That nothing's going on. And we've got a huge vision and we want to go. And God has been moving. In the last 4 months, we've seen 30 people baptized into Christ or restored. For us, that's a big deal. I don't know about your church. That's a huge deal for us. 4 of them have been teens. We've got Donazelia, who's I think she's 76 or 78. She's going. One of the guys is Jean, who was reached out to by another young professional. One of them was a professional soccer player. Jean, one of his first major services was our congregational celebração service. And he brought like 9 people with him. God wasn't a Christian. And he's like, oh, here's my cousin and his like fiance. And there's like my brother. Oh, my best friend. Hey, Kaiki. Kaiki just got baptized last Sunday. He's one of his best friends. He's got like 5 people studying the Bible, and one of them is his mom. And his mom, I think she's in her late 60s, isn't just learning about Jesus. She's studying the Bible with Sylvia, one of our elders was. She's also learning how to read and write. And we think as we're sharing our faith, all you're going to do is help some kid maybe become a future evangelist, or maybe he'll become a disciple. And what we don't realize is that by sharing our hearts, by sharing our life, by being humble, by being that bring the boy to me, let's get this going. You don't just change one life. You might be changing families. You're changing generations. You're breaking cycles of violence and chemical abuse and sexual abuse, that you're transforming generations. What you're doing on your campus and your family as a missionary, wherever you go, it changes lives. And it's certainly inspiring us while you're doing it. So I just send a huge hug. Thank you guys from everyone. Well, you've prayed, sent wishes, messages. I got a lot of friends and a lot of support on this. And it's an amazing thing to know that we have a team quite like this around the world. I hope you have an amazing, fruitful semester. And God bless you. Thanks for having us here.